different kinds of costumes worn by English women during last century. We begin with 1800, when dresses were simple, with high waists and long clinging skirts, in what is called the Directoire style. England was at war then. Silks were difficult to get. It was patriotic to wear cotton and wool. They called it classical in those days. The ladies of 1800 discarded almost as much clothing in their Great War as was done in our Great War. They tried to look like Greek goddesses. 10 years later, they found that in short skirts they were perhaps less like goddesses, but much more comfortable. You see, the waist is still short, and they had ankles again. These two dresses, one for day, the other for evening, might have graced some of Jane Austen's heroines. They were worn at the date when Waterloo was fought. Now we jump to just 100 years ago, when the romantic young things of the 30s read Byron and wore dresses like these. You can't help noticing those enormous sleeves, which they called elephant sleeves, the scuttle bonnet and the curious Bertha cape and shaped parasol. This other dress, 1837, shows that the ballooning of the sleeve is now at the elbow. It was called the melon sleeve. This was the fashion when Queen Victoria came to the throne, and they say this fashion is coming in again. By the 50s, flounces grew and grew. A dainty little shawl and spoon bonnet and a fan parasol gave a coyness which no doubt was quite irresistible. This dress was perhaps worn on a visit to the Great Exhibition of '51. The great moment now arrives when the crinoline and the Albert Hall were built and rivaled each other in size. How would you like to wear a ball dress like this, with a skirt 25 feet round the hem? The dancing partner must have been hard put to it to get at grips with his subject. Here is the stately dress in which the matron of 1860 promenaded in a colossal mantle, to say nothing of half a dozen petticoats. They had perhaps 12 pounds of clothing and as many children. Matrons were matrons in those days. You see her saying farewell to her daughter, who is wearing a dress actually worn as a going-away dress by a bride in 1865. She has on her head one of the famous pork pie hats. By 1870, women became creatures of curves. The bustle sprouts out at the back. See this ball dress, ballooned and puffed, with a sort of overskirt called a polonaise. They danced the polka in that, and the bustles bobbed up and down, and sometimes a staylace would go off with a pop, and then heaven knows what happened. Here's how a girl of the 70s looked when she boldly played croquet with the curate. Very dashing he thought her too, in a hat like a dinner plate, and hair in a chignon. Now we have the elegant 80s. This is the sort of dress made famous by Miss Lily Langtry, and here is a souvenir of the Jubilee of '87, with the bustle and the Grecian bend. Certainly there was no slouch about a dress like that. Contrast it with the famous tea gown of the last years of the century. It suggests, doesn't it, elegance in repose. You see how woman clung as long as she could to the idea of elegance. Nowadays we prefer comfort. Can't we have both? Here are some quite modern answers to that question.